The Ehlers-danlos community takes on the mascot of the zebra because the way that all of our symptoms manifest is unusual and peculiar, even though, and they don't seem connected, and they can be very, very serious too. And it can be dangerous because so many doctors don't understand it enough. They're not educated, and they need to get educated because it can be dangerous when too many complications spiral out of control and they're all negatively affecting each other, because Ehlers-danlos is a systemic illness. I mean, the problems that happen with Ehlers-danlos, at the core, faulty collagen is to blame. Collagen is a protein and it's your glue, your body's glue, and it's everywhere in your body. Collagen's in your organs, yeah, especially in your skin. Yeah, my skin's really elastic. It's in your joints. It's in your tendons, your tissue. It's in your tissues, and it's in us. We have soft, delicate, spongy, permeable. It's really weird. Like, I'm very elastic and soft, but very elastic, which is good in a way because the people who are less elastic tend to be more, their blood vessels are more susceptible to rupture, and because the skin is thin but it's not elastic, so instead of stretching when the circulation is off, or blood volume or clots or anything, it's more likely to tear. But our tissues can tear more easily and like get atrophied, like get all lazy and atrophied, kind of like there's muscular dystrophy and there's collagen dystrophy. So gastroparesis, which is paresis of the gut, basically. Some people end up on a feeding tube because of that. I'm kind of on the border because my gastroparesis has been really kicking my butt the past year. It causes you to not absorb as well. It causes your digestive system to not move as well, or like stagnation, which is so bad for the gut, leaky gut, which then causes autoimmune problems and toxicities and infection. Like, a lot of stuff comes from the gut, so that's why a lot of bad stuff happens with EDS, because our guts are so sensitive and basically eventually develop paresis. That is one of the most debilitating parts of EDS, especially because a lot of gastroenterologists don't understand it, and it looks fine on imaging, so it's not like there's a big fat gaping ulcer. It's more like the way that it's functioning. It's not functioning. It's not flowing. It's too bad that more gastroenterologists don't look more into the functioning of the gut, as opposed to just how it looks superficially. If there's a big fat gaping ulcer or a big fat tumor, and if there isn't, then you're fine, and it's too bad, because gastroenterologists should do more like their jobs. But anyway, EDS can have some pretty grave effects because of your collagen. The spinal cord, it doesn't hold itself together very well, and you can have all kinds of neurological problems from that. You can get Chiari malformation because the head is very heavy and the neck struggles to hold it up, and eventually the neck struggles and it goes, because we have a small kind of like head shape. I can't turn, but I've got the hypoplastic posterior fossa, the head shape where it's small down here, kind of goes in, and my brainstem is right there, and my neck is totally straight, has a loss of curve, and my brainstem isn't herniating down, but it's right there. It's kind of what they call Chiari 0. So there's no herniation down, but it's starting to compress, and it makes it hard for me to be upright for too long. Neurological symptoms and pain and pressure. I get intracranial pressure, which indicates there might be fluid there that builds, especially when the neck's been up for too long and you're exerting and you have to hold your head up and it's blocking the flow because of the pressure. So that's so common, and it doesn't have to be a full-blown Chiari. Like, a lot of them don't recognize it until it's a full-blown Chiari. It can be cervical cranial instability, they call it, CCI. So just the instability and then the pressure. That happens a lot with us. It's incredibly common, and I think it's one of the main reasons why we end up so debilitated. Because when this is compressed, your hypothalamus is really upset. It's being kind of putting pressure on the hypothalamus, on the brainstem, on the medulla that regulates your heart rate. So there's the the POTS, right? When you're standing up, your heart rate suddenly increases, and it can sometimes make you pass out or feel lightheaded. So all that stuff happens because of fundamental flaws in the collagen. It's actually all to do with that. The gastroparesis, the brainstem compression, or Chiari, or what they call atlantoaxial instability. So the odontoid bone that connects the neck to the head, it becomes unstable. And then sometimes you get, some people with EDS get terrible stiffness and horrible muscle spasms because their bodies are trying to like defend itself against the collagen dystrophy. And as collagen dystrophy increases, the more a lot of people's bodies tend to do this, which is why it's really ridiculous when geneticists that are really archaic and not quite with the times are so obsessed with looking at hypermobile joints and stuff, because a lot of people with EDS, once they start to get really sick, their joints go actually pretty stiff, and it cancels out the hypermobility essentially. You gotta look more at the skin and the blood vessels and to see if the joints are loose. Like my finger here, I don't know if you can see, it's coming right out of the, if I pull it. I'm not going to try and bend it back though, because I've got like really awful arthritis in my knuckle and in my joint there. So, but like they're unstable because my glue is getting suckier basically and more delicate. Instead of me getting all wrinkly, I'm seriously like melting. And I make jokes about it like I'm melting, but it's not funny because my collagen's getting weaker. There's actually a nutritional protocol that's new called the Cusack protocol that apparently stops it. It's quite expensive, and I have been skeptical, but I've seen a couple of my friends actually feel a lot better on it, so I want to try it. But I also have to clean up the damage that's happening to me. My gut is just like effed right up, and my neck's in really bad shape. So I can only like be upright, upright every day for only a preciously short amount of time before I start feeling like total crap, and have like bottoming out electrolytes and stuff like that. The electrolytes dropping is another thing too. It's really interesting because I think how you see athletes with Gatorade and all that. When they're training that hard, they're using up their electrolytes. They're burning up their electrolytes. So I think what happens is that literally our muscles have to hold us together, and they have to work very hard to do that. Just like an athlete who would be pumping at the gym, because our collagen sucks and it gets weaker with time. So I think that we honestly burn up electrolytes exerting, and we get salt dropping, low salt, low potassium, and we need to basically charge up on electrolytes or pass out. And if electrolytes get chronically very low or very low, that can be dangerous, especially with potassium. So that's not a good thing. And a lot of Ehlers-danlos patients in the US, where they do have adequate treatment, get weekly infusions with IV of electrolytes, which is a good way to increase the quality of life. But there are tons. This is just an overview, like a quick me on coffee after meds, reasonable in a chair for 15 minutes overview of this. I'll wrap up by adding a bit about people getting disbelieved, treated like liars, and not treated nicely. Well, Ehlers-danlos, other than if I do this with my skin, which then people go, whoa, or, whatever, I can't do it with my joints anymore. Unless people learn how to look for it, it's completely invisible. In fact, EDS people, until they're very ill and like really pale from malnutrition, from gastroparesis, and, other complications like infections, which we can get often because the collagen's not moving along and we're immune compromised, we're slow to heal. Anyway, off on a tangent there, but once we start, if we're more acutely ill, or when we have to use bracing, like if I use my bracing and when I'm out, I use my cane now. But other than those things, when people get more sick, for a long time, Ehlers-danlos is totally invisible and people do not get hurt. And people live in terrible pain. From the time they're kids, a lot of the time they were hurting and they almost didn't know it was abnormal to hurt like that until they get severe arthritis and they realize that, wow, this really is not normal. And they start begging for answers, and then doctors and people treat them like crap as they get worse, and like sometimes get anxious and depressed because they want someone to listen, and a lot of the time there's ignorance about EDS out there, and nobody thinks, oh, could this person have Ehlers-danlos? It's so common. The rate of people getting either undiagnosed or misdiagnosed with everything under the sun, from like psychiatric disorders to like fibromyalgia, like random non-specific autoimmune disorder, somatoform, all this crap, that this misdiagnosis that dangerously, you know, misses the need for EDS specific medical treatment, which becomes a serious need in the end when things get that bad. For some, they don't. Some people can go without medical intervention, but a lot of people eventually require medical intervention. And it can be a dangerous thing when they have like bad psychiatric labels on their file, or people, including their own family sometimes, getting sick of them and not believing them as the person gets more depressed and hurts more. And some people end up, unfortunately addicted to, drugs and alcohol, or, painkillers or whatever. They just feel like they want to give up and no one believes them. Our skin makes us look pleasant and young, and that's really the thing, is that until we're super white as a sheet because we're super anemic or whatever, we often are fairly pleasant looking and young looking. So that really deceives. But that is ironically the exact reason why we're sick, because our collagen is too soft. It is not strong like normal people. Think twice. Ehlers-danlos is the condition that's going to, once it gets more out there, teach people to think twice. Like, people don't realize that only certain illnesses are visible. Most are actually not visible, yet they cause people a lot of grief. So, people need to start thinking that if somebody appears to be struggling, they may have an invisible illness, and that's actually a lot more common than you think. So, food for thought, Ehlers-danlos in a 15-minute nutshell.